Good morning. Welcome to Fair World Order. My name is Jeff. Today is February 2nd, 2021. And if the groundhog sees its shadow today, we get 6 more weeks of 2020. Scary thought. All right, so this is it. This is the first episode of the main show. I previously did episodes pre and post inauguration to kind of set up my views of the incoming and outgoing administrations while I could. But this is the show as it's going to be. And I had teased previously that I would kind of set up what this show was about, what my point of view was, and that's what I'm going to start off with this morning on. So my background is in anthropology, although my degree is in anthropology, although I never pursued it professionally. It has definitely informed my worldview and pretty much everything I've done since college. So as I go through the show, it's going to be from an anthropological point of view. It's also going to be a point of view from my personal individual values. You're going to see that through promos throughout the show. And as I go through stories, as I give my opinions, I'm always going to refer back to my values. And I'm going to talk about where those come from here in the second part of this opening discussion. But ultimately, so what is fair world order? So this is, to me, a reference of the acknowledgement that we have an existing world order. Whether it's American neocolonialism, white supremacy, capitalism, neoliberalism, our institutions throughout the world are organized in particular ways, and we need to start examining what that order is, what those institutions are, who it's benefiting, who's paying for it, and we need to start working towards a new model of how to organize the world. So literally, we need a new world order. However, that collection of terms is so loaded, I didn't want that to be the title of the show, because then everybody would immediately go to conspiracy theories and Illuminati. But fair world order, that's at the core of my values, fairness, and it's at the core of how we need to establish this world order centered on economic justice for everybody. So on that note, there's about 4 minutes of a video that I want to play for you guys. And this is a debate from 1971 between the French philosopher Michel Foucault And the American linguist from, at the time, he was at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Noam Chomsky. And in this debate, they're talking about things like political institutions, human nature, and even though their values are probably somewhat similar aligned, they are coming at this from two radically different points of view. Now, if anybody knows anything about Michel Foucault, he is one of the vanguard philosophers of postmodernism. His conceptualization of the world was radically different from other people throughout the 20th century. So such things as, to him, our concept would have been first world, second world, third world, where you have a pro-freedom capitalist West versus an authoritarian, government-centric, communist East. And then the third world is all the countries that these two are fighting over. Michel Foucault argued that there was really only two things. There was postmodern societies and pre-modern societies. And the distinguishing aspect between the two is how the societies exercise their power. And he talked about this in such things as discipline and punish. He talked about the panopticon, and really he argued that modern societies were built as disciplinary societies in which people were, a small group of experts would determine the correct mode of living. They would create certain standards based on that knowledge, and then through a series of examinations, evaluate lay people, evaluate the population to their adherence to those standards, and then through discipline and establish corrective mechanisms to get people to adhere to the standard. And to him, this process of observation and discipline that was the hallmark of modern societies, which was true for, at the time, the United States or the Soviet Union. They were indistinguishable. So one of his core tenets, Foucault's, that is one, that there is no human nature. The very concept of human nature is a social construct and is modified depending on the needs of the powers within that particular society. And he talks about this earlier on in this debate. So where we're picking up here is where Foucault is cautioning. Foucault had just spent several minutes cautioning about the dangers of recreating institutions of political violence if we're not critical and examining the existing institutions. So that's kind of where we're going to pick up this. That's where we're going to pick up this discussion for a few moments.
Noble, apparemment aussi pure que celle du syndicalisme anarchiste.
Yes, I would certainly agree with that, not only in theory, but also in action. That is, there are two intellectual tasks. One, and the one which I was discussing, to try to create the vision of a future just society. Another task is to understand very clearly the nature of power and oppression and terror and destruction in our own society. And that certainly includes the institutions you mentioned, as well as the central institutions of any industrial society, namely the economic, commercial, and financial institutions, in particular, in the coming period, the great multinational corporations, which are not very far from us physically tonight. Those are the basic institutions of oppression and coercion and autocratic rule that appear to be neutral. After all, they say, well, we're subject to the democracy of the marketplace. Still, I think it would be a great shame to lose or to put aside entirely the somewhat more abstract and philosophical, if you like, task of trying to draw the connections between a concept of human nature that gives full scope to freedom and dignity and creativity and other fundamental human characteristics, and relates that to some notion of social structure in which those properties could be realized, in which meaningful human life could take place. And in fact, if we are thinking of social transformation or social revolution, though it would be absurd, of course, to try to draw out in detail the point that we're hoping to reach, still we should know something about where we think we're going. and such a theory may tell it to us.
Oui, mais alors là, est-ce qu'il n'y a pas un danger? Si on dit que il existe une certaine nature humaine, que cette nature humaine n'a pas reçu dans la société actuelle les droits et les possibilités qui lui permettraient de se réaliser. C'est bien ce que vous avez dit, je crois. Et si on admet cela, est-ce qu'on ne risque pas de définir cette nature humaine à la fois idéale et réelle, cette nature humaine cachée et réprimée jusqu'à présent, est-ce qu'on ne risque pas de la définir dans des termes que nous empruntons à notre société, à notre civilisation, à notre culture? Je vais prendre un exemple qui est un peu caricatural, mais le marxisme d'une certaine époque, à la fin du 19e, au début du 20e siècle, le marxisme admettait en effet que dans la société capitaliste, l'homme ne recevait pas toutes ses possibilités de développement et de réalisation, que la nature humaine était effectivement aliénée dans le système capitaliste. Et le marxisme rêvait d'une nature humaine enfin libérée. Or, cette nature humaine, quel modèle utilisait-il le marxisme de cette époque-là, du 19e, du début du 20e siècle, quel modèle utilisait-il pour la concevoir, pour la rêver? C'était en réalité le modèle bourgeois. Le marxisme a considéré qu'une société heureuse, c'était une société qui faisait place, par exemple, à une sexualité de type bourgeois, à une famille de type bourgeois, à une esthétique de type bourgeois. Et c'est d'ailleurs tellement vrai que c'est comme ça que ça s'est passé en Union soviétique, où sous prétexte de réaliser une société où l'homme réaliserait enfin sa nature, on a reconstitué une espèce de société à la fois réelle et utopique qui est transposée de la société bourgeoise du 19e siècle. De sorte que, est-ce que la notion de nature humaine, vous-même, en commençant, vous reconnaissiez, je crois qu'on ne savait pas très bien ce que c'était que cette nature humaine. Alors, est-ce qu'il ne risque pas de nous...
Okay. So, basically, between Foucault and Chomsky, you had two different concepts of what progress, of what it meant to be progress. On the one hand, you have Chomsky saying that in order to progress as a society, in order to get from A to B, you have to have some sort of concept of what that B is. So we have to have an idea of what a utopian society is, what a model society is, and then make all of our actions working to advance to that point B, to that model society. And Foucault is cautioning that the problem is whatever we conceive of that point B is a reflection of the society that we're currently in. And we're almost incapable of imagining something other than the society that we're in because that society has molded who we are and how we see the world. So while we're striving to achieve a model society, we are going to keep recreating the very society that we're in and the institutions of political violence that are embedded in that society. The example he gave was about Marxism and the Soviet Union, but we could apply it to our modern day, thinking about such things as, for me, something that's going to become really important is economic justice and economic liberation and wealth and access to wealth redistribution and access to resources. The problem with that, even while I'm going to advocate for it, I have to acknowledge that the problem with that is that the concept of wealth redistribution and access to resources is very much bounded up in my Western individual capitalist mindset. So, and thinking that your self-worth and your success as a human being is based off of what you've accumulated, what you've accomplished financially. So in trying to ensure that everybody in the world has access to the same thing I have, I'm really just recreating this Western mode of thought that may be detrimental to the rest of the world. right? So I have, so as I talk, as I evaluate the news, as I evaluate stories, as I tell you my perspective, I have to be cognizant of that warning. I think the problem with Foucault, though, is it leads to a form of nihilism or paralysis, where if you believe that you're just constantly doomed to recreate the same problems, then what's the point of ever trying to fix the existing problems? And that's really where Chomsky comes in, saying that we have to have some kind of a concept of what we're aspiring to so that we can work towards that. And if there's one point in the video where he describes that as sort of a zigzag, and where, yeah, you're aspiring to one thing, but you might, maybe you're recreating your current problems, then you go somewhere else and you go somewhere else. And Chomsky is basically saying, yeah, that is the process, and it can be uncomfortable, but that's the process we have to follow because there is no other choice. So in a lot of ways, this show is going to be predicated on this debate. What is progress? How do you work towards a utopian society without just recreating the very forms of political violence that you're fighting against? And you can almost kind of imagine a little Chomsky and a little Foucault sitting on my shoulders, chirping in my ears as I look through these stories, because both perspectives are important and valid and have to be acknowledged. To ignore one is to doom the discussion to nihilism or a fanciful utopian and actually not, or performative progress without actually achieving any real results. So so as I go through this, as I go forward, these two guys are going to weigh heavily on a lot of discussion because of what they represent. So that's kind of what I mean by trying to imagine a fair world order, trying to follow Chomsky's guidance of imagining what point B would look like and how to get there, while acknowledging Foucault's admonition of not recreating the very institutions that we're fighting against. The other thing I wanted to talk about was my personal values. During the 2020 election in particular, actually, I'm going to back up a little bit. During the 2016 election, I remember very well, I was in Augusta, Georgia, when Donald Trump won that election, and it was deeply unsettling to me, alarming, unsettling. I felt nauseous, and I remember that night that nausea physically was the same kind of sensation I would get, say, if the Eagles lost another NFC championship game, where the Lakers made it to the finals and lost. It was just this feeling of anxiety and doom, and is my team ever going to win, this team that I care about? So I really did a deep dive into my own beliefs, because I recognize this connection between team sports and politics. And it was important for me to determine, was I upset that Trump won because my team lost, or was there something else going on there? And what it really forced me to do is really define what my values are. And that's not something, particularly on the left, that we talk about a lot. We kind of, values voters are often associated with conservatives, with Christians, with fundamentalists. But I do believe that there is a set of values that we operate with as progressives, as liberals, as socialists, but often they're not spoken about because they're associated with this conservative Christian movement. But when I really examined what I thought my values were, I realized that my opposition to Trump and the Trump administration wasn't just my team lost. It was his existence, his power was a violation of every value I had. So it wasn't just, shucks, my team lost. It really was deeply offensive to me. And I think whether people are conscious about it, that's what was going on throughout the country. It wasn't just Republicans versus Democrats. It was an affront to tens of millions of people's core values, even though I don't think in later discussions many people were really cognizant of that. Now, fast forward to the 2020 election, and I've now spent 4 years contemplating my values and really trying to define what they were. And as I would have conversations with people during the Democratic primary, almost, I'm not saying almost every single person I talked to, and it's not a lot, but every single person I talked to, not one person ever mentioned values. Not one person ever mentioned I'm supporting this person because he represents my values or she represents my values. It was I want to vote for this person because, and several people said this, I will not support a white male this year. So it was Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren or a white straight, I wouldn't support a white straight male. So Pete Buttigieg was an acceptable choice for this voter. Some people, one person who's incredibly intelligent, incredibly well educated, smarter than me, more educated than me, and really follows politics and news as much as I do. But his response was he was going for Pete Buttigieg because he was looking for somebody that would be carry the torch of the Democratic Party for 30 or 40 years. He was looking for a young leader. Another group of people I know that are active in politics, local politics here in Tucson, were just looking at the horse race, and they were only concerned with who was most likely to win the general election, which if you heard my views about Joseph Biden, I think this was the predominant view throughout the Democratic Party. One person was supporting Pete Buttigieg because they saw him as being extremely intelligent and well educated, much like Bill Clinton was. So it felt like a reflection on who they were. Pete Buttigieg felt like a reflection on who they were, so they were supporting Pete Buttigieg, with no knowledge of anything that he had done as a mayor, and his relationship to blacks within the police department and the fire department and throughout his administration. No knowledge of that, just he's a really smart guy. I think I'm a really smart person, so I'm going to vote for the person that I believe is intelligent. Nobody said, these are my values, this is the person that represents those values. And that's what's missing from the conversation. So what are my values? And for this, it's actually kind of a little irony. So this is a paperweight. You're not really gonna be able to read it, but I'll pull up what it says here in a minute. This is a paperweight from Rotary International. Now, I am not a member of Rotary International, never have been. I've only met one person in Rotary International. But this is an international civic organization. It's people that get together to do good things for other people. And this paperweight has something that's very central to the Rotary's belief system, and it's called the four-way test. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up here so you guys can kind of see what I'm looking at. So the four-way test. This was created 1932 by Herbert J. Taylor, and it's the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? So that's the test. And the irony is, I actually stole this little paperweight from my sister. She had won this, or this was a gift to her from, I don't know, Honor Society or a tennis tournament or something. I saw it in her room one day. I read it, and I must have been 10, 11, 12 years old. But there was something about what this said that just seemed so true to me. I probably at that time had just abandoned Christianity for atheism, which meant like my belief system, my model of the world was kind of on shaky ground. And when I saw this, it just spoke to me as just like some obvious truth. And so I sold this from her. I took it and I've had it with me now for over 30 years. This goes with me everywhere I go. When I was deployed to Kuwait, deployed to Afghanistan, Korea, everywhere I go, this little paperweight goes with me, and it's always in somewhere in my house where I see it on a daily basis. Right now, I keep it. It just sits under my computer monitor. So from the 4-way test, my core values are honesty, fairness, equality, and justice. And I think these values are the cornerstone of a fair and just society. I think they're the cornerstone of the social contract. And as I look at stories, as I look at things in the news, I'm going to be referencing these values. I'm going to be referencing the 4-way test and saying, okay, here's a set of facts. Here's now, how do I apply my personal values to those facts to come up with what I think, how those facts should be interpreted. I'm going to be upfront about what my values are, and I encourage anybody listening to this to also go really look at what your core values are and how those values, how you would create a society rooted in those values. So that's really what the show is. It's imagining a future world rooted in values that are honest, fair, and beneficial, and build goodwill for everybody involved in that society. So with that being said, we're going to take a quick break here. I'll be back in about a minute to go over some news stories. When I talk to other progressives, what's often missing from the conversation is our core values. We have them, but we don't put them forward. When we know our values, claim them, and lead with them, we learn who we share our values with. I think we can have a better world, rooted in honesty, justice, fairness, and equality. And to get that world, we have to put our values front and center. Fair World Order is the program that's going to discuss how we do that. Honesty, justice, fairness, and equality. These are the foundations of our social contract. These are the values that build a cooperative society. These are the values that will ensure our long-term survival. Our current economic and social institutions upend and distort our values. If we don't get back to a society that affirms our shared values, we're never going to be able to fix the issues that are ripping us apart. On Monday, the Myanmar military forces, or Tatmadaw, declared a 1-year emergency and arrested President Win Myint. This military coup led to United States President Joe Biden declaring that the United States will review the reinstating of sanctions against Myanmar that had previously been lifted under the Obama administration. Myanmar is often referred to as Burma, the country's name under British colonial rule. The military government officially changed the name to Myanmar in 1989, with some critics of the military regime continuing to use Burma. Win Myint's party, the National League for Democracy, had won over 60% of the seats in the House of Nationalities and over 58% of the seats in the House of Representatives in the election held on 8 November 2020. Indian government officials blocked mobile internet services in many areas around New Delhi late last week, as farmers began a 1-day hunger strike. The hunger strike is the latest part of the larger protest that began in August 2020, as farmers began to protest changes to the farming laws in India. The protest is seen as the largest protest in world history, and over 120 deaths have been recorded during these protests. And I'm just gonna switch over to, so that's a couple of the main stories in the news, and now we're gonna switch over to the Innocence Project. All right, so today's Innocence Project story, this is about Anthony Wright. So Anthony Wright was convicted in 1991 of first-degree murder, burglary, and rape. Served 25 years in prison before he was retried and exonerated by DNA evidence. The DNA evidence pointed to a Ronnie Bird as the real assailant. You know, I'm going to be doing these stories almost every day, and I'm already starting to see that it's going to be the same story every day. Let's see, contributing causes, false confession of admissions, government misconduct. Let's see. So several people testified against Wright. A couple of people testified against Wright. They had conflicting details. They did not mention the real assailant, the person who actually committed the crime. Since the original trial, 2 of the witnesses had passed away. But the prosecution, okay, so under Pennsylvania law, the prosecution was allowed to enter the earlier testimony into evidence. So basically this means that when Mr. Wright was retried, there was evidence introduced at his new trial, but his lawyers weren't able to cross-examine those witnesses because witnesses had passed away. However, fortunately, the jury, in a 7-5 vote, at his original trial, he narrowly escaped the death penalty. So this is a man that could have been killed if 2 more people had voted for his death. He could have been killed probably within the 25 years, only for DNA evidence to later exonerate him. And I've said this in the other 2 Innocence Project stories I reviewed, and it's going to be, I'm going to be beating a dead horse on this. These miscarriages of justice aren't just about freeing the innocent, although that's a significant part of it. It's also about getting justice for the victim. In this case, the victim was Louise Talley, who was raped and murdered in who was raped and murdered in 1991. The person that actually committed this crime remained free for nearly 30 years. So when we rush to just prosecute, when we allow prosecutors to rush to justice, we serve no justice at all. This man, Anthony Wright, lost 25 years of his life, and Louise, her actual assailant, remained free for 25 years. We have to demand not just a completion of cases, but the correct completion of cases. And this means not allowing police to bend the law or break the law. Forcing prosecutors to put their ego aside and seek truth, not just a conviction. I'm going to be hitting on these stories. I'm going to try to do these stories every day. And I encourage all of you in the description below. In the description below, you'll see a link to the Innocence Project. I encourage everybody to go look at these cases themselves. And there's a couple other websites that talk about wrongful convictions, but I would encourage everybody to go out and seek as much information you can on these cases. With that being said, I'm going to take another quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about some more news. Here's the paradox to honesty. We have to strive to finding truth, even while acknowledging it may not exist. I don't believe in any absolute truth, but I strive to be honest in all of my thoughts and actions. Everyone has their own concept of what's true, and we have to have the humility to recognize that we can be wrong. Honesty is difficult. Committing to searching for something we'll never find is frustrating and sometimes painful. But without that commitment, all other values lose their foundation. We have a choice to make. Are we building our society based on competition with each other? On getting as much as we can while we can? In a competitive society, values are only there to ensure the exploited stay in line. The alternative is a society rooted in cooperation, working together to overcome the natural challenges of life, of sharing our resources and the product of our labor. And fairness is the cornerstone of a cooperative society. All right. Baseball great Hank Aaron passed away in his sleep. The cause was not released on January 22nd. As reported by the African American News, Hank Aaron retired from Major League Baseball after a 23-year career as the home run king with 755 career home runs. He was the last Negro League player remaining in Major League Baseball, and his impact on society led to him being awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2002. Reported by Chanel Ganet at The Root, Ryan Coogler, director of Creed, Fruitvale Station, and Black Panther, has signed an exclusive 5-year deal with Disney Television. Among the announced projects will be a live-action Disney Plus series set in Wakanda. Very excited about that. In Rochester, New York, an undisclosed number of police officers have been suspended after body cam footage was released from an incident last Friday. In the video, we see 7 officers surrounding a 9-year-old black girl who had already been handcuffed and was sitting in the back of a police cruiser. As the girl is screaming for her father, who had been arrested, we hear one of the officers say to spray her. Then we hear the girl screaming about her eyes. Not one of the officers on the scene attempted to prevent the spraying. All right, so I came across this story last night on the Minority Report with Sam Cedar, and this story really, this hit me. So I'm gonna switch from hard news. I'm just gonna kind of give my opinion on this. And there's really only, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one right opinion to have. So after a year of, about 8 or 9 months since the murder of George Floyd, a summer of protests for Black Lives Matter, a group of white nationalists, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, fascists, literally trying to storm our government and overthrow our election. Nothing should surprise me. But this story really did. I'm not going to show the video, but if you see the video, this is a 9-year-old child who just saw her father be arrested, is herself is in handcuffs in the back of a police cruiser, and like any 9-year-old kid is experiencing trauma in real time and is expressing her reaction to that trauma. The thought of pepper spraying a 9-year-old child is unconscionable. I cannot imagine what is going through somebody's head when they said, spray her. I can't imagine what's going through somebody's head when they pulled out their pepper spray and tortured an incapacitated, restrained 9-year-old child. I hope all of these officers that were involved are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, although I don't hold out any hope that will happen. I would encourage everybody to reach out to the mayor of Rochester and demand justice for this child. But it's unconscionable that this would happen. And watching the video, what really ticked me off was the number of police officers on the scene. And as the officer steps away from the car who said to spray her, you see all the other officers in the background, several of them with their heads hanging low. They knew what was going on was immoral. They chose to say nothing. There was a gap of several seconds from the time where the officer said to spray her and from the time where the child was actually sprayed. Any one of those officers had the opportunity to say, "What the hell are you doing? We don't pepper spray children, especially children that are already handcuffed in a police car." And again, this, as shocked as I was by this, I shouldn't be. This kind of thing is happening all over the country. But in the weeks and the months that go on, I'm going to do my best to try to figure out why this is going on, what can be done about it. But bottom line is, if you're a member of a group, if you're a member of an organization, you have to start taking out your trash. You have to stand up for what's right or wrong. You have to exercise your values. I would ask anybody to tell me what values were represented by allowing that officer to pepper spray that child. Did it in my values, truth? I'm not sure how truth would apply here, but was it necessary to was it necessary to spray her? Absolutely not. The truth is they already had her restrained. They just needed to exercise a little bit of patience with a screaming child. Was it fair? Absolutely not. Anybody that thinks it's fair to pepper spray a handcuffed child needs to leave our society immediately. You have been voted off the island. There is nothing fair about there. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Absolutely not. There was nothing served, the community didn't benefit at all. The child didn't benefit at all. The cops didn't benefit at all by doing this. To be somewhat sympathetic to the officers involved, I'm sure many of the officers that were in the background are themselves going to need some kind of therapy after this. I'm sure they are racked with guilt. I'm sure their consciences are eating them alive right now, and as well it should. So there's no goodwill that came out of this. There's nothing that was served. And is it beneficial to all concerned? I mean, come on, obviously not. Again, what values were served by sitting back and watching an officer do something you knew was wrong? And I know somebody out there is going to say loyalty. That's the value that was served. You should be loyal to those with whom you serve. That's an Army phrase. When we are loyal to people doing immoral acts, we are being disloyal to the victims of those acts. So I don't want to hear about loyalty excusing bad behavior. If you really want to be loyal, stand up for what's right. That's how you express loyalty. I encourage anybody listening to this to go out and seek knowledge about this story, and do your best to educate people about this, so that hopefully in some way, shape, or form, we can prevent this from happening again. And with that being said, I'm going to cut to the last break of this broadcast. Building a society that's beneficial to all requires equality. We have to embrace diversity for its own sake. We have the resources to uplift everyone, so let's make the choice to ensure we do so. When we pursue equality, we strengthen ourselves and our community. This means some of us will have to lose some of what we have now, but there's liberation in equality. And true equality opens up opportunities for ourselves just as much as for us. Justice is this concept that we end up getting what we deserve, for both good and bad. I believe we deserve better than what we are getting now, and that we can have it. A just society preserves the dignity and the welfare of all its people. A just society promotes agency. A just society ensures the law works for everyone and that people have access to the resources of their society. All of the other values lead to this: economic and legal justice for all. All right, welcome back. In this segment, one of the things I want to do is not just talk about things, but actually put things into action. In this segment, I'm going to be looking at specific GoFundMe campaigns, particularly ones that are significantly underfunded. And then the link for today's campaign is in the description below. And then I'm just going to kind of look over the story, and then I'm actually going to make a donation myself. I'm not rich. The donation isn't going to be significant, but I am going to try to do this every day to not just talk about things, but actually do my small little part from my neck of the woods to help out. So this is a story. This is on GoFundMe's website, hashtag Salvemos a Rafita. And this is sadly very similar to another story that I was going to talk about. The one upside, the other story I was going to talk about, that they actually did get the money they needed for their campaign, so they are no longer accepting donations. But then I came across this one, and it's a very, very similar situation. And it's in order to purchase this gene treatment medicine called Zolgensma, and the other case. So in this case, this child was born. The child Rafita was born in I believe October of 2020 with a genetic disorder called spinal muscular atrophy. So this is a disease that will hamper, if not kill, this child at a very early age, by 2 years old. And in the past, this disease was basically an automatic death sentence. However, there is now a treatment for it, but this treatment is over $2 million, $2.1 million. So it is imperative to get money raised for this family as fast as possible in order for this child to get this treatment. Like I said, there was another campaign very similar to this, and they were able to raise their money. So if you're able to help this family out, please go to GoFundMe. The link is in the description below. And I am going to go ahead, and I'm not going to show how much I'm donating, because I don't think that would be appropriate, but I am going to make a small donation. In this case, I am going to include, so when you make a donation to GoFundMe, all the money goes to the campaign. The GoFundMe site itself doesn't make any money off of that, I believe. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how this works. So in order for the website to make its own money and to maintain its operations, you do have the option of tipping GoFundMe directly. In this case, I'm going to do that. And the reason I'm not showing you this is so that you don't see my credit card information. But I am making a donation. And there you go. So again, I'm going to try to do this every day to help. And I am going to go ahead and share that to Facebook. So it's really sad to see, anytime we have the opportunity to help somebody, particularly a child in need, I would to the extent you can try to do so. Not all of us are in a position where we can help others, but if you can, please do so. So I'm going to switch over to another story here. All right, so this is a segment I'm calling Pet Your Rep, or Petition Your Representative. Here in the United States, we have the constitutional right to petition our government for grievances. And the way to do that is to know who your representative in Congress is. There's multiple ways, but one way to do it is to know who your representative in Congress is. So for that, there is a link in the description below. And you can go to this website, the house.gov website, and there's a particular page where you figure out who your elected representative is. So I'm going to put in my zip code. In my case, my zip code is split up between two people. I already know who my representative is, but if you're not sure, you can put in your address and it will tell you exactly who it is. So I'm going to go ahead and I would click on Raul Grijalva, and it would take me over to this website, his personal website. And unfortunately, on his site, the contact me button is disabled for some reason. But if I go down below, I can click on contact us. And it says this page is the link from the original contact me page, which is disabled. but it does give you this page where you actually can contact him. Hopefully your representative is a little bit easier to get a hold of. Now, you may have to show that you actually are using the right representative. I think most Congress people have this on their website, and the way to do that would be to show your zip code, and in some cases the full 9-digit zip code. I've already found my 9-digit zip code, so I've already put that in there. Again, I'm not going to show my address here. Actually, I kind of just did. I didn't want to do that. Oh, too late. And on here, I'm going to go to telecommunications, and I've already prepared the body of what I wanted to say, so I'm just going to paste that in. And basically it says, to Representative Grijalva, I am writing to express my concern about the future of net neutrality. I was dismayed that over 19 Democratic debates, there was not one single question to any candidate about net neutrality. And hope that the reason for this omission is that it was understood that every candidate would immediately, actually, I'm just going to switch over this, that every candidate would immediately work to reinstate this policy. With the nomination of Jessica Rosenworcel as acting chairwoman of the FCC, I believe we are headed in the right direction. I also believe that legislation is required now to ensure that a future administration is not able to do what the Trump administration did in repealing net neutrality. What are you doing to create or support legislation that would permanently protect net neutrality? Thank you, Jeffrey Snyder. And I have an option, yes, I would like a response. No, I do not want to subscribe to his e-newsletter. And, oh, I have to say, Mr. And there, I've sent it. All right. So that's it. So I may not do this every day, but I'm going to try to, as often as I can, actually contact Representative Grijalva. His office will probably get sick of me depending as the show goes on, but that's all right. And it's the best way. One of the best ways to get action is to actually contact your representative and tell them what you are concerned about, what you want done. The more representatives see on a particular topic, the more likely they are to realize that they actually have to act in some capacity. So there is one last thing I wanted to do, and that is cut to the last word. So the last word is going to be I just want to make sure I get the proper credit for this. So the last word is going to be a segment where I show a clip. Sometimes it's going to be just a humorous clip of some kittens or something, but more often than not, it's going to be a clip from a creator on TikTok who has maybe I agree with this person, maybe I don't, but I want to make sure that it's somebody that doesn't fit the same demographic I do, that has, even though we may agree on something, has a different perspective and has taken some time to put some thought into it. So this first video comes to us from Curly B, and this will be the last word, and this will be the end of the show. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Here y'all go again. All I keep seeing on my FYP is y'all talking about how people who flip burgers for a living should not be making $15 an hour because you have a college degree and you make $20 an hour. Number one, Miss Ma'am, let's unbox that for a second because you're giving me very much I'm better than you. So let's unbox that. The argument from y'all typically is, well, people who work at McDonald's should be teenagers, and why do they get to make so much money? Number one, Miss Ma'am, who is serving you that McChicken and chicken nuggets and that spicy ass Sprite at noon on a Wednesday when kids are at school? Adults who have a household and kids to uphold. And just hear me out. They're humans who deserve livable wages. And the other part that I want to unbox is y'all are looking me dead in my face and telling me that because you went to college and because you put time into getting a degree, you deserve to make enough money to live off of. But because I didn't, I deserve to be in poverty and just simply die. Right.